Hello, everyone. This is Sarah Hassan, Manager Libraries British Council, and I will be moderating today's reading marathon opening session. Before we begin, we have two main housekeeping rules. Please keep your mics and cameras off and only switch them on when the instructor asks you to. In case you have a question, please post them in the chat box, and if time permits, we will be taking a Q&A session at the end. And the session will be recorded for promotional purposes and to share with those individuals who were unable to attend this particular session. And I will now be inviting Charlotte Smith, who is the Senior Teacher Europe, to welcome the audience, introduce the guest author Sidra F, Sheikh, and officially launch the Reading Marathon program. Over to you, Charlotte.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Sarah. And welcome everyone to the launch of the British Council Reading Marathon. I must say, talking to the digital library team, the uptake of these challenges has been absolutely amazing so far. I think we've had, from what I gather, over 3,800 participants from all over the world, over 6 marathons. And in this particular one, we have more than 700 people, I think, registered, which is, yeah, pretty amazing. I'm joining you today from Bulgaria in Southeast Europe, which actually is one of the newest members of the British Council Digital Library, which we are incredibly excited about. And globally, we're joining a community of 150,000 members in more than 30 countries. And all of those members obviously can enjoy, as you know, a huge range of content, which showcases the best of the UK and as well as global content as well. And as I'm sure you're aware, you can find resources that are supporting your personal development, your professional development, your academic development, as well as fantastic events like this one, author talks, book readings, storytelling sessions for all ages. So there's so much to explore and to enjoy. Before I introduce our wonderful guest today, I just want to say a couple of words about what this event represents to me as personally, like you all, a lifelong lover of books and reading. Because I think reading by its nature is really often an individual pursuit. You know, we kind of hunker down in a corner, maybe with a cup of tea quietly to enjoy our books and a bit of quiet time. But the very fact that we're here with people from across the globe, shows that we are part of a huge community of like-minded people and that we're united by a passion for stories. And I think we're all probably aware that sharing stories is really one of the most human things that we can do. And a good book can take you away from your own reality and then bring you back, maybe a little bit changed, but maybe more aware. And it can present a challenge to your existence, but really it reinforces some of the universal truths of what it means to be alive and to be part of the world. So you might read across a range of genres, but really there are no new stories, only just countless ways of expressing how similar we are. And I want to borrow a phrase from the title of a book by the late British author Hilary Mantel, which you may be familiar with. Because literature is really a mirror and a light. It shows us ourselves, but also opens us to others, other experiences, other cultures, other ideas. So we don't necessarily get to choose our world, but we get to choose how we see it. And books can give us a portal to kind of other possibilities and other perspectives. One author who has definitely been showing us other worlds with her 2 published books is Sidra F, Sheikh, who is joining us today. So Sidra is a lawyer and a writer. She's the author of the best-selling The Light Blue Jumper, which was published in June 2017 by Mongrel Books in Karachi, and its sequel, A Shade Darker, which was published by Windy Beach Books in April 2025. Her poem, No One Likes You, was published in the LF Review, Volume 5. Sidra is a partner at her family's law firm, serves on the board of the Gulab Devi Trust Hospital and Medical College in Lahore, and is an independent director on the boards of various public listed companies. She has a BSc in economics from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and is a solicitor the Supreme Court of England and Wales, and an advocate of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and also finds time to write books somehow. So thank you so much for joining us, Sidra, and I will hand over to you.
Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. It is such a pleasure to be here today at this opening ceremony of the Reading Marathon. And reading is something that's so dear to all of us here today. It's just lovely to be able to speak to everyone about my own reading and my writing journey, because my writing journey ties up with my reading journey from childhood. So I feel like I would love to share the moment when I knew that I was going to be a writer with everyone here. So when I think back to a time when I fell in love with reading, that was when I was 8 years old and in third grade. And I had just read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And that opened up a world for me that I just was desperate to be a part of. It led to many attempts to go through wardrobes at my own home, friends' houses. I was determined to somehow get into Narnia. But even though I couldn't get through a wardrobe, but it opened a door in my soul for magic and for worlds separate from ours, which we could wander into and wander out of. And I started reading. I read The Hobbit at that age. I read The Wizard of Oz and A Wrinkle in Time, The Borrowers, A Secret Garden, so many books. And I just couldn't get enough of fantasy and the worlds that it opened up for me. I was at the Lahore American School, and they had this really well-stocked library. And we would have library lesson once a week. And we were allowed to issue 3 books at a time. And I would get my 3 books, and then I'd be done by midweek. And then I'd be waiting, counting down to the next library lesson. And it was my whole world at that time. And my third grade teacher told my parents during one of their parent-teacher meetings that she's going to be a writer when she grows up. That was something that I really took to heart and I held on to. But as luck would have it, my parents decided to move me to one of the local girls' schools in 4th grade. So I ended up in the British system, and it was a wonderful school, but unfortunately the library was lacking and there was hardly anything there. So then began my pursuit of finding, something to replace the LAS library. I went off to find bookstores, and at that time in the 80s in Lahore, it was you had 2 major bookstores, Feroz Sons and Vanguard Books on the mall, and they were mostly classics that you could get from them. So I read all of those, but I was craving fantasy. That's what fantasy and sci-fi is what really speaks to me. So that's when the British Council came to the rescue. I discovered that I could go to the British Council library. My mom got membership for the family, and then she would take me every week with my siblings, and we would look forward to it all week and go and get books from there, and I would sit there and read. So I have this long association with the British Council Library in Lahore. And when my kids, I have two girls, they're 9 and 13 now, when they were younger as well, I mean, now we have tons of bookstores and all the latest books are available throughout Lahore. But I still take them to the British Council Library for their events. And my older one especially loved it because the feeling of being in a library is just different to being in a bookstore. It's just you can't replicate it. And the joy that comes from being surrounded with books is just the best feeling in the world. So now, after all of this, you would wonder if I at 8 years old that I was going to be a writer, why did it take me so long to write my first book, which was published in 2017? So for me, it was where I just, as I grew older, I decided that the voices outside were louder than the voices inside. So, and it happens to most of us that when you're a child, you know very, very clearly who you are, and you know what you want and what makes you happy. And I think as you grow older, you start drowning out that inner voice and you start listening to voices around you, and you try and become what you ought to become, or what people tell you that you should be. So I went on to do a degree in economics, and then I did law because we we have a family law firm, and I joined that, and I started practicing. And then I became one of those people for many years who say that one day I will write a book. And I would tell people at college as well, yes, one day I will write a book. But it's one of those things that never really arrives. That day never arrives. So it was only when I had my firstborn, my older daughter, and I took a step back from active legal practice, that I thought to myself, maybe now is the time. And then of course, I came up with lots of excuses. And, there were things like, oh, I have a toddler, but I'm so busy and I'm still doing part-time work. How am I ever going to get this done? A very close friend of mine who is also a writer, she's a science writer and a physicist, she said to me, look, you don't have to have it all figured out. Why don't you just start? And that has become the holy grail by which I have charted my writing career, because this was all just, one day at a time, writing whenever I could, consistently over the years, which led to these two books. And right now I'm working on some historical fiction, which I'm editing at the moment, and a fantasy manuscript as well. So it's just all consistent effort without knowing where it's going to end or what you're going to get at the end of it, but just believing that you can do it if you do it one day at a time. So that's what I've been doing all this time. And reading is still something that gives me so much joy. Writing does too, but reading is what really fuels all the writing as well. And as you were mentioning that, you can read and get lost in different worlds. Even now, when I pick up a good book, my children complain and say that, you're not listening, you're not paying attention. Where are you? I can't put it down. Once I'm in, then I'm in. So right now I'm reading Alchemized, which got a lot of hype, and there was this whole thing about it. And I wondered, whether it would live up to it, but it's been amazing, and I've been lost in it, and it's a huge tome of a book. So I have been reading nonstop for the last week, and I feel like maybe I might finish it today.
So at this point, I would just like to ask the audience, if you have any questions from Sidra, do let us know in the chat box, and Sidra will be answering them for us. And in the meantime, I have a personal question. Sidra, what inspired you to choose science fiction? Because there are not a lot of books, not a lot of science fiction authors, particularly in Pakistan. So I would want to know the journey through this particular genre.
So Sarah was something, I think when we start to write, we don't really choose the story chooses us. So when I sat down to write, I had this character in my mind, and it was this pale blue alien who was the opposite of everything that we normally believe in. He was someone who was extremely well-mannered and very particular about the little things in life, but all his other priorities were completely skewed. So this is someone who had no problem with the universe being in peril as long as he was he wasn't unemployed. I mean, his whole focus was that he needed job security. And this is our unlikely hero who the rebellion thinks is their prophesied Messiah. So it was something that unfolded in my head, and I wanted to write something. I mean, it is anti-imperialist. It is something at the root of it is basically, it's against exploitation and colonialism. But these characters are all, it was billed as a comedy of errors when I wrote it. And it is because these characters are all so convinced that they are the heroes of the story. So each one of them thinks that without them, nothing can happen. And it's all multiple POV, so you get to see what each one is thinking. And this was, I think science fiction just lent itself so well to the story that I wanted to tell about a ragtag bunch of rebels who are trying to fight against a huge intergalactic empire that has taken over everything. And then I just found the humor in it as well, because it was just so interesting to see how these characters interact with each other and how it plays out. So I feel like sometimes science fiction is the best tool to actually show us a mirror to the things that we accept in our everyday life, the things that we show apathy towards, where we don't react the way that we should. And sometimes when you pick it up and put it in an alien universe, you actually start to see the absurdities that we take for granted and that we accept in our daily lives.
So, Sidra, we have another question around, which is a very interesting question, and I really want to know it as well. What book do you wish you had written? Is there a book that you wish you had written?
So many. I mean, when I'm reading something great, I'm always like, oh God, I wish I'd written this. But there's one in particular. I'm a great admirer of Oscar Wilde, and I feel like I wish I could have written what he wrote. The Picture of Dorian Gray is one of my, absolute favorites, and I feel like there's just so much to it that, yeah, I would have liked to have written that.
Another question is, what is the best book that you have ever read in science fiction?
So I'm gonna say, although it's really hard to say, pick out one book, but as I quite like the lighter side of sci-fi, and I'm not so much a military sci-fi or a hard sci-fi fan. I love The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's just one of my absolute favorites, and even The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. I think so. I would say those are my favorite kind of sci-fi books.
Thank you for answering those questions. We have another question in the chat box. So, Sidra, do you think the pressures of academic pursuits and expectations of following in a family business affected your ability to read for leisure? And sometimes I find myself feeling guilty for abandoning leisure reading for academic reading during my teens, but I'm finally beginning to connect with leisure reading again. So, if you faced something similar, how did you navigate this in adulthood?
So I used to read a lot, and then there was a time when I was a student, when I was in London for a few years, and I stopped reading. I was so busy with trying to get my academic life in order that I totally stopped. And then a few years later, I realized that I was missing home. And the one thing that really kept me going was when I picked up a good book and I could actually feel at home with the book. Then I picked up books that I had read earlier when I was younger, and they made me feel some kind of connection to home and to my family again, because, especially in the cold London winters. So I know exactly what it feels like to feel guilty for reading for pleasure, because you feel like, oh, I should be doing something more productive. Maybe I should be reading something. And I see people have this debate all the time between fiction and nonfiction. And there's some people who very proudly proclaim that they never read nonfiction. They never read fiction. They always read nonfiction because, who has the time for fiction when there's so many things in the world that you need to learn? And I feel like fiction is something that teaches us so much. There is such a wealth of knowledge and the way that you see the world through other people's eyes, people from different cultures, people who've lived different lives, who see, and it always teaches you something. And it doesn't have to be in the form of a sermon or like a lecture or an encyclopedia. When you're reading a story written by someone who's lived a different life to you, you learn so much from their perspective. I feel like that is something that is priceless. Like, you should not feel guilty at all for reading fiction. You should read for pleasure, and you should really embrace this, because it's something that is going to teach you. It's going to open your mind, and also it is something. Just the act of reading itself, I feel like it's a statement now, because there's such few people who can manage to, I mean, especially in the younger lot, because of screens and because of all, everything being bite-sized, it's very difficult for people to actually get into a book. So if you can do that, that is something amazing, and you have to hold on to it.
Thank you for answering that so beautifully. There is another comment that says, I have never read any science fiction books, but I would love to read your book.
Okay,
And
thank you. I would love for people to read it as well, because I feel like, even though things get marketed as genre fiction and, something is YA or something is adult or whatever, these are all just marketing categories. It is, at the end of the day, just a story. And whether it's set in space, whether it's set in a castle or in the past or future, it's just all about human emotions. Even if it's about aliens, it's really about what you can relate to as a human. So I think every story is worth reading.
so there's another question on how did you feel while writing your book?
I was extremely excited while I was writing it, because I really enjoyed the process. It made me feel alive to be writing. I felt like I was so connected to my inner voice, and I really enjoyed it. It was something. I mean, I know there's some books that are, more laborious to write, or there's sometimes people, like, it depends from book to book and writer to writer what your process is. But this book just brought me so much joy. It was a real, it was an adventure to write. So I loved the process.
I have another question on did you set any reading goals this year? Because we've almost started the new year, and what reading resolutions did you have for this year, and how are you keeping on track?
So I have a big TBR for this year, which I have now gotten through two of those books since they are started. So I'm feeling quite proud of myself. But I do have a big pile left, and especially books by fellow Pakistani authors who I've promised that I will read and review. Those are weighing on my mind, and I really have to get through those quickly. There's some fabulous writers here in Pakistan, and it's a joy to read their work, but it's kind of also like a commitment. So I have to make sure I get it done.
So you're two books in already. That's really
I'm
inspirational.
doing so. Yes.
So we have another question. Do you ever deal with writer's block? And if yes, how do you manage it? I'm sure a lot of people want to know this.
Yes, this is something that comes up very frequently. So, there are, of course, in every writer's life, there are times when you're writing something and then you lose the thread, or you lose the flow, and you feel like it's just not happening. You're not getting the right words to go to the next scene, or you're not able to describe what you want to say. You just can't put it down in the right words. So in that, I feel like sometimes when I'm feeling like I'm running out of steam, the best thing to do is to read something amazing. It just really opens up your mind again, and you're suddenly, the words are flowing, and you feel inspired. So it's really important to have that fuel with you. You have to have your favorite writers, um, books that you love, and you have to keep going back to them, because it's something that will keep opening up your mind, and it keeps it kind of lets your creativity flow as well. It's when you read something great, it just fires up your own creative engines. So I think it's really important.
Thank you for sharing that. I hope this will help a lot of us. There's another question on how, on one of the attendees, they want to be a writer, and as a beginner, they want to know what they should do first. What should their first
Mm.
step be?
Mm. So there are many different ways in which you can approach um, writing. If you want to write a long form like a novel, or if, some people start with writing short stories because they're more manageable, and they find that if they do a few short stories and then send them to various magazines and things, they can get published. It sets them on their path. uh, I wrote long form. I don't write short stories except for maybe like one I've written. I really like writing the long form. So it depends what you like, what speaks to you. And if you want to write novels, then if you want to write a novel, then you have to try and figure out what your process is. It's very individual. I have friends who write with entire sort of, plot outlines and save the cat, and they do the whole plotting. They know everything, all the beats before they start writing. That's one way of doing it. Then there are people like me who are called pantsters, who basically don't outline before they write. It's about getting into the flow and writing one scene at a time, and then the story sort of unfolds as you're writing it, and you go over it in edits very carefully to make sure that everything makes sense. But while you're doing the first draft, you just go with the flow and you let the story come out. And I feel like that works for me. It might work for you as well, or you may be the other sort who does, the plotter who does all the plotting first. For me, if I tried to plot in detail, it would kill the story in my mind, because I feel like it doesn't all come at once. You just need to have one scene down, uh, a few characters down, and then they start interacting on the page, and the characters lead the story. Um, and there are a lot of famous writers who write like that. For instance, Stephen King, that's his way as well, where you can see as far as the headlights, but you don't know where it's eventually going to go. For that, you need a lot of faith in the story and in yourself that you're going to see it through. Plotting seems easier, more methodical on the one hand, but then also it can compromise your creativity depending on what kind of person you are. So I would say you need to first figure out what works for you.
Thank you for sharing the wonderful tips. So another question is that are there any writer names or books that you recommend for Pakistani writers? And they've also mentioned that they will start by reading your book for sure.
That's very kind. I would love that. Yes, I can recommend quite a few writers. So off the top of my head, there's Awais Khan, who has about 4 books out, and he writes social issue books. But they're written like thrillers, so they're very gripping and really interesting. I would say check out all his books. Then there's Faika Mansab, who's a brilliant writer. She's done 2 books. Her latest is The Sufi Storyteller, which is also something which is um, a mystery and there's a deeper story behind it. Then Shandana Minhas is an excellent Pakistani writer. She's got a number of books. I think her latest one has been published by Penguin India, and that is Firdaus Nama. That's a historical. Sonia Kamal, who's done Pride and Prejudice, but it's the Pakistani version, which is really like a treat to read. Faiza Heather, another brilliant Pakistani writer. Her latest, A Woman on a Suitcase, came out last year. That was fantastic. She writes with a lot of wit and humor and satire, and it's really lovely to read. I can't think of anyone else right now, but I'm sure afterwards I'll think of like 10 other people. But these are the ones who I can recommend right now.
Thank you for your wonderful recommendations. They have also specified that can you mention the books that they can read to get to know more about uh, the culture, our local culture, basically.
So everyone who's writing from here, when you pick up their work, you will learn something about our culture because we are all mirrors of that culture. No matter what the topic is, we are all products of this culture, and you will see that reflected in the stories, in the words that we use. So I would say pick up any of these writers that I've mentioned. You will get a good dose of culture from that because it's not something that needs to be the topic of the story, but the settings and the characters, you will get a window into how we think. And even if you pick up my books, there's no Pakistani character as such, but if you read it, you will get a window into our souls and what our sense of humor is and how we think and what we like to eat. I mean, everything is there in the characters, although ostensibly there's no mention of Pakistan. It's in a galaxy far, far away, and it's in the distant future. But, they say if you know, you know, so you'll be able to tell.
Thank you for answering that. Sidra, can you also let us know if how and where the attendees can access your books internationally, because there seems to be quite a lot of interest.
So my books right now, physically, they're available in Pakistan, but the first book, The Light Blue Jumper, is available on Amazon Kindle, Amazon US and UK. And the second book, A Shade Darker, will also be up on Amazon very soon. So it will be accessible from Amazon UK and Amazon US.
If someone else has any questions, please mention them in the chat box below. And there's another question from a participant. They want to know a little more about your book.
So my book, the first book, was envisaged as an anti-imperialist comedy, which was basically like a story of space cowboys who were, just a ragtag motley crew and fighting against a huge oppressor. Help comes in an unexpected form, and they're not quite sure how to access that help because the person who's supposed to be their hero is not very interested in helping them. The second book, and the first one ends at a point where they are actively fighting the empire, and it's on a bit of a cliffhanger, so I won't give a spoiler. And the second book picks up from where the first left off, and in that we look at some deeper issues that are associated with rebellion or revolutions, because revolutions are quick and often violent and they lead to results. But then what happens afterwards is the question that this second book asks, because often we know how to dismantle a system, but it's very hard to find what is the best option to replace that? And how can we do something that actually justifies the revolution in the first place? How do we actually find a system of governance that works without turning into what we hate? So we basically, without becoming the thing that we are fighting against, how do we manage this? So that's a deeper look. The second book gives you an insight into all the characters and how they deal with this, and what happens to the world um, when things go right. And is that really something that you question whether what you think is right is actually right? So it's a deeper look into all these questions.
Thank you for answering that so beautifully. We have another question. My daughter is deeply interested in fantasy and fiction and dreams of becoming a writer when she grows up. What would your advice be to the young ones?
My advice to anyone who wants to write is to read widely and to read a lot and to make it a lifelong habit. It really has to start in childhood. So I feel like there's such make or break years, these sort of 8 to 10, 11, this age when you can fall in love with reading, because the way you feel things and the intense way in which you relate to stories changes as you grow older. So you can still become a reader, but the passion and the single-mindedness that you have at that age, a younger age, I think you should take full advantage of that and, make that a habit. That kids are reading before bed, they're reading. I mean, I have a few nieces and nephews who carry books around with them. My children do that sometimes as well, where they'll have a book. So any place they need to wait or whatever, a book will come out and they will start reading. I do that too. I have a book in my bag, and that travels everywhere with me. So they're usually all my whatever I'm reading looks very well thumbed by the time I'm done with it, because it goes everywhere, so I can finish it.
Thank you for answering that, Sidra. We do not seem to have any other questions, but let's just ask the audience one last time and then we can move on to the next bit of this session.
Sure.
So, if anyone has any questions, you please mention them in the chat box. Otherwise, we can move towards the presentation. Okay. So, thank you so much, Sidra, for sharing your wonderful journey with us and sharing all the amazing tips with us. They were truly useful and inspirational. And once again, thank you so much for taking the time for this session.
Thank you,
I,
Sarah.
I would now request my wonderful colleague Anjan for the reading marathon presentation and just walking us through the different steps and how to go about the marathon. Anjan, handing over to you.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Let me share my screen first. Give me a second. Okay, it's coming up. Okay, hope everyone can see my screen now. Okay, to begin with, I'm Anjana. I'm from Sri Lanka. And I welcome all of you to the Reading Marathon January batch 2026. And moving on. So today, these are the contents we'll be following through. First, how to access the digital library and on how to borrow your books. Third, a bit more information on the digital library app. So without waiting further, let's go ahead. All right. So, So there's this link which I'll be uploading right now. So using this link, you can all log into the app MyLoft. So this is where you'll have to log in order to get access to the digital library itself. Give me a second. All right. So I have put up the link here. You might have already received instructions on this. So when you're logging in, what you have to do is you have to select your country. Then you have to put in your username and the password, which you may have already set up. And then moving on. So this is our dashboard towards the left. This will appear as soon as you log in, and then you'll have to click on the fiction section to access to the ebooks and the audiobooks, and towards right next to it, towards the right, that's how it will be visible to you once you do log in. And so okay, moving on. There'll be a separate curated selection, a collection to you. Whoever is participating in the reading marathon, it will be there. And on how to borrow books. So first you have to click on the book which you wish to borrow, and then once you do, the option is there saying the option borrow is there. So you just have to click on it, where you'll be able to borrow this book for 14 days. And if you want more, you can renew it for another 14 days. And if it's past the due date, it will automatically return from your account towards to our collection. So that's about it. And how to renew the book. So again, likewise, you'll have to click on the book, and you'll see on my screen the option is there towards the bottom, renew loan or return. So you can do either. If you're done with the book, you can return it, or else you can renew the book for another 14 days. Okay. And I think this is the part where all of you are most curious about. So during the journey, so you'll have to follow these steps to fill up your reading log. So yes, here it says once the books are read, you have to fill up the reading log. It's already sent to you, shared with all of you in the opening ceremony email. And please join Padlet via the link to join the discussion and stay connected with the fellow participants in your group. So this is the Padlet, this is the reading log, where you can see everyone else's logs as well. So you can connect with the other participants as well. So basically you have to read at least 4 books to receive this certificate. And finally, about the British Council Library app. So it's called MyLoft. So you can install it in Play Store or App Store, and you just have to follow the same steps as before. So you have to, okay, let me just take you to the first slide. Okay, here. So here you go. You have to put in, choose your country, your email address, and the password that is set up for you. And then log in. And this is how your dashboard would be. Also, if you've got any queries, just you can write to this email address, which I'll be putting in the group. This email address, I'll be putting it in the group towards the end. Okay, and there's a question saying, please, can you show the process again? Okay, I'll be frank. So you have to log into the digital library, like I said twice, and then go to the fiction section. And there's a specially curated section for the reading marathon. So you just have to go there, and then once you do go in, this is how it will appear to you. And if you are borrowing books, you'll have to click on the title you wish to borrow, and then there's the option to borrow. And if you want to renew, again, you'll have to click on the title, and then there's the option to renew, where you'll be able to renew it for 14 days, 14 days more, or else you can return it. And you have to fill in your reading log. It's already there. The link is already shared with you during the in the welcoming email. And yes, that's about it. Hold up. I'm not able to see my opening. Okay, you'll have to check in your inbox. You might have received it a few days prior. And how can I write the writing doc? So there's a link in your opening ceremony email. So you just have to go through that, and then it will direct you towards the reading log where you can go through and then fill it up. That's about it. Okay, that's another question. Let me just see. Okay, someone has shared the link as well. So if there are any queries, just please do write to this email address. I'll share it with you. And then one of our members from our team will reach back to you. Okay, now I'll hand it over to Sarah. Sarah, over to you.
Um, Thank you so much, Anjan, for sharing all the details of the reading marathon. And there's another question, and I would just want to reiterate what Anjan said, that in case you have not received the reading logs or need any further queries, the email address to our inbox will be shared in the chat below, and then you can reach out to us and we'll address all the queries that you have. Now I would like to hand over to my colleague Charlotte once again for giving closing remarks and concluding the session.
Hello again, everyone. And I think probably my main closing remarks here are going to be related to a lot of the things that Sidra was talking about in her speech and when she was answering the questions, because I think there are a lot of things that really a lot of us could relate to as readers. She mentioned a couple of things about her reading journey, which I could definitely identify with, and I'm sure people here can too. The excitement of picking up books when you're a child and being completely involved in those worlds, and the way that your relationship kind of changes with books as your life progresses. And certainly about how it affected her journey to becoming a writer. I particularly liked her comment that, you know, she realized that the voices outside had become louder than the voices inside, and she needed to kind of give space to the voices inside. And I think that's something that, you know, we could all do more of, whether that's through writing and expressing ourselves, or whether that's through reading and kind of listening to the voices inside as well. And the other thing, I think, especially for anybody who is aspiring to write or create in any way, she talked about consistent effort without knowing the end and what you're going to get out of the end of it, but just kind of being invested in the journey as well. And with this reading marathon, it's a type of journey for all of us. You know, over the next few weeks, we'll be on a journey of exploring different books and maybe kind of looking into genres and titles that we hadn't considered before, really exploring the range of books on the digital library platform. And, you know, there are a couple of questions in the chat about people who had never gone into kind of science fiction or perhaps Pakistani writing before, who wanted to know more of that. So I really hope that you get the chance to delve into something a little bit different and maybe open up a whole other world of reading. So best of luck to everyone, and I really look forward to kind of hearing more about your journeys as they go on, and celebrating this period of reading together as a community. And yeah, thank you so much for the digital library team for organising and bringing us all together in this way. Back to you, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Charlotte, for your closing remarks. And thank you to all the participants for making this a very engaging session and taking the time out to attend this. If you have any further queries, please reach out to us on our inbox and we will be able to respond to you and share all the details regarding your queries and resolve them in a timely manner. We look forward to your participation in our future events. And if you need any information on our digital library, our future events, please keep reaching out to us on our email addresses and do check us out on our websites. So, looking forward to seeing you in future as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.